Chase for the Championship is made possible by our partners, including Kroger. Visit Kroger for all your holiday needs and stock up for college bowl season. R.S. Andrews, Dog Nation's choice for all your heating needs this season. Visit rsandrews.com to see how they can make you smile today. Marlowe's Tavern. Need a tasty gift this holiday season? Try a Marlowe's Tavern gift card. Visit marlowstavern.com to purchase your gift card today. And Georgia Farm Bureau. With experienced and friendly agents all across the great state of Georgia, Georgia Farm Bureau keeps its promises to members. Learn more at gfbinsurance.com. Here are your hosts for Chase for the Championship, Dog Nation's Brandon Adams and John Stinchcomb.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into Chase for the Championship, presented by Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, Georgia Farm Bureau, and R.S. Andrews. A chance for us to talk with John Stinchcomb here coming up in a moment about how Georgia gets back on the Chase for the Championship. With the Orange Bowl looming against the Michigan Wolverines and the potential for an Alabama rematch possibly in the national championship game come Indianapolis in January, we'll figure out what Georgia needs to do to make all of that happen. And unfortunately, a day like this, that obviously starts with a little bit of a look back on what went wrong against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Certainly no one's favorite game in UGA history, but important to still figure out how the next time can be better than the last time. Of course, for Georgia coach Kirby Smart, and this is something we're going to hear from John Stinchcomb on in a moment. For Georgia coach Kirby Smart, he looks at the frustrations that bubble up after the game against Alabama and the feeling of wanting to get back out there again and show that Georgia's better than it was as a team last Saturday in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Smart thinks all of this can be fuel for what is still to come for the college football playoff. In fact, he said as much Saturday night after the game. This is Kirby Smart on that very topic.
Oh, no, it didn't do any damage. No, what it did is reinvigorated our energy. It recenters you, right? I mean, I think one of their greatest thing is when they lost their game against Texas A&M, they were to garner some focus and some attention. I mean, to me, that's an opportunity for a wake-up call, if anything. Unfortunate that it comes in a setting like this. But, I mean, they're a really good football team, okay? And the narrative out there was, well, they just went at Auburn and they really struggled. And some of the sacks they gave up, their tackler didn't even have a stance. You know, the crowd noise was a major impact there. Auburn played man most of the down, almost every single play, and they won a lot of their battles that we didn't win tonight. But we knew the narrative coming in, these guys can throw the ball, and they got a really good quarterback. And they gave him an opportunity to make plays, and he made a lot of really good plays along with their wideouts.
So John Stinchcomb, with all that in mind, wake-up call, chance to right the wrongs of the SEC championship game, maybe new level of motivation. How true do you think that can be, and how well do you think Georgia can use all of that as fuel?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to it. What I like is that Georgia has a really talented football team. And when you have a loss like that, the fans and folks on the outside, they find it to be devastating. It's going to be a tough loss for the guys on the team. The good news is the season isn't over. The opportunity that you're shooting for at the beginning of the year, the ultimate opportunity of winning a national championship, that's still on the table. So wake-up call, yes. I've had coaches throughout my career say you're never as good as you're being told that you are, nor are you as bad after a loss. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think this Georgia team, it was a brutal loss. We all saw it. It didn't go the way anyone expected. I thought Georgia was going to be a big-time victor, a two-score victor. Didn't play out that way. And so when you go back and you watch the film and you figure out why, I think some of the major issues that Georgia had can be rectified. What's defined this team is their ability to execute on assignment, not have a lot of mental errors and missed assignments, and then just play really solid football, both sides of the ball. That didn't happen in the SEC championship. And if that's the wake-up call that Coach Smart is referring to, I think there's a very good reason and a foundation that you can build that case from.
I get the sense that the players themselves, the coaches, the team, they probably turn the page quicker and better on this than the fans do. And it seems like the opposite might be true, but I believe in reality, the players, because they can refocus their efforts, they get back to work, they get back to practice, they get back with the business of football, whereas fans are sort of forced to sit around, twiddle thumbs, buy time for the next game. That the way this loss has kind of lingered for the UGA fan base, I don't get the impression that's necessarily quite as true for the Georgia coaches and players. In fact, Smart himself has said he's already heard from UGA players who are really angling to get back to work. It's kind of funny the way the mindset's different for those inside the team as opposed to maybe the feelings outside that bubble right now.
And that's so true. I mean, the fans will have 3.5 weeks to sit here and chew on the fact that it was not a close game, or it certainly wasn't as close as Georgia was hoping for. But the team, the coaches have looked at the film. They've watched and seen where the mistakes were made, where the opportunities were just a half a step away. You go back and watch the film, there's a couple plays where Georgia is one step away from breaking a big run or having a catch that continues a drive. And as a player, as a coach, you can build from those things. You go back, you watch the film and say, hey, on this coverage, you're out of position. Don't be out of position. Those are things that can be corrected, that gives you reason for hope. Here's what we can do better. Here's what we can keep working on. The fans, we don't have anything to work on. All we're going on is this last game that was played. We look like the inferior team, and it's a song that we've heard many times before that we're tired of hearing. 7 times in a row, Alabama has come out there and proven themselves to be the victor and the superior team. And for the fan base, you're so sick of hearing that narrative, and we don't have anything that we can do. There's nothing that we can do. There's no practice that we can go to get better as a team. We sit here and we fester on all the things that went wrong on this past Saturday and don't have any way to make that situation any better until we get this next opportunity and watch Georgia go up against Michigan.
It's Chase for the Championship, presented by Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, Georgia Farm Bureau, and R.S. Andrews. Happy to have John Stinchcomb and all of you with us in the program there today. The other topic that has really remained hot since the loss to Alabama on Saturday is what is going on with Georgia at the quarterback spot, or maybe more accurately stated, what's not going on with the Georgia quarterback situation, and specifically speaking there, consideration for a change going to JT Daniels and away from Stetson Bennett. That has been the common cry among many fans, but thus far, Kirby Smart not heeding that call from those fans. In fact, on Saturday night after the game, when asked to consider how Smart might look at the potential of a quarterback change heading towards the college football playoff, Smart was slow to even concede that would be on his mind really at all, and refusing to really kind of acknowledge the quarterback spot right now is different than any other position this Smart from Saturday night on that topic.
We have a decision to make every week at every position, but I have the utmost confidence in Stetson Bennett and think he did some really nice things tonight, but we go and reevaluate everything all the time. But, he played well, and it's tough environment we put him in defensively, and we have to be able to run the ball and have a little bit of semblance of balance. And I felt like there was times tonight that we were getting into a scoring contest because our defense didn't get stops. And you don't want to have to do that. But I certainly have a lot of confidence in Stetson, and I have a lot of confidence in JT too.
I'm certainly willing to believe that Kirby Smart's making the right decision here based on the things that Smart knows that I'm not privy to. But the one thing that I guess wish that he would do more of is maybe offer an explanation for why he's making the choice that he's making. And frankly, based on what I know, I wish he'd at least consider the possibility that making a change is the right thing for UGA. But when Smart spoke again on Sunday in the Orange Bowl preview press conference, he let it be known at that time that no, during the game on Saturday, no matter how lopsided the score got, no matter how much at times it seemed like the Georgia offense was struggling to keep pace with what Alabama was doing, that apparently was never a consideration for UGA on Saturday. This is what Smart said about that topic last Sunday.
As far as the Stetson JT question, no, we never discussed that on the headphones last night. And, obviously we have to play better in a lot of areas, but to put any part of that blame or all that blame on Stetson, there's a lot more to it than that. And we got to play better around him. We got to play better on special teams, defense, and really all facets of the game. There were some really, really, really good throws last night by Stetson, some throws that only his guy could catch the ball, and he made some good plays. And we got to continue to work on the poor decisions and a couple of the throws there that were picked off.
John, Kirby Smart seems to be working very hard not to cultivate a quarterback controversy, but despite his best efforts, it almost seems like that's what's erupting here, especially given the way that other media and certainly the majority of fans seem to be talking about this right now. So I'll ask you, do you think this has become a quarterback controversy at UGA?
Well, having listened to Coach Smart a couple times, I've heard those clips, and there's two truths that I think we all need to embrace. Number one, the blame from that SEC championship game, there's plenty to go around. Stetson is not the only guy who didn't perform at a SEC championship level. I mean, the pick six was the nail in the coffin that really sealed the deal in that game. But leading up, and this is the point that I'd like to start with, Coach Smart indicates the identity of this football team is defense first. And that's what's gotten them to this point in the SEC championships, why they're in the college football playoffs. And the defense as a whole did not live up to the bargain, the agreement, the way this team is built. They didn't perform at the level that was needed. So Coach Smart is first and foremost indicating that you cannot place the blame at the feet of Stetson Bennett and say this was your issue alone. This was a team issue, and you can call out a number of guys that would probably be more problematic in their execution than Stetson was. That's number one. The second truth is there is a quarterback controversy that may not be existent in the coach's office, but it certainly is in the fan base and across Dog Nation. The way that the season played out last year, where JT Daniels was not an option, wasn't even considered, but yet when he comes in, played at a really high level, has brewed itself into a situation that's very similar to the one we find ourselves in 2021, where the quarterback play wasn't up to the standard that many have set. And I agree with Coach Smart. He made some great throws, but also those interceptions, the two interceptions, and possibly the one that was dropped by Alabama defender in the first series, those prove really costly. And you have to be able to protect the ball. That's another one of the key identifiers of this team this year, is being able to protect the football. So whether or not Coach Smart and his staff recognize it, I think there very much is a quarterback controversy because of the history that's played out at the position.
And of course, on the other side of the ball, and I think that you heard John say this very well, that listen, defensive-minded football team did not do a good enough job of stopping Alabama on Saturday, but that doesn't mean the defense couldn't have better results and potential rematch. I want to focus here for a second, John, if you don't mind, on a way in which maybe the next time could be better than the last time. I was listening to Colin Cowherd the other day, kind of a sports talk blowhard, and he was talking about, Bryce Young and how good he is, the fact that he could maybe be the number one overall pick in this year's draft if he was eligible, kind of compared him to Aaron Rodgers a little bit too. But in describing the one concern he had about Bryce Young, I think it becomes instrumental in remembering what Georgia needs to do more of to maybe make Young look a little less like Aaron Rodgers in a potential rematch. This is Colin Cowherd. It sets me up for something I want to tell you. This is Cowherd on Bryce Young. Take a listen to this.
Dan Orlovsky used to play in the NFL. He's a commentator now. He said Bryce Young would go number one if he was available this year in the draft. And I agree. Bryce is I watched him play in California. Very unique talent. Now, Orlovsky compared him to Aaron Rodgers, and they are both very light on their feet. The ball comes flying out of their hands. Quick release. There's nothing I don't like about him, except he's a little thin. He's 6 feet tall and about 195. And if you're going to be a little smaller quarterback, I prefer you be Jalen Hurts or Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray. You're thick. Even those guys are hurt, and they're thick. And two of them play baseball and know how to slide. So he's a little thin, but I got to be careful about being too judgmental on that. So I think he's a better athlete than Tua. Tua's on a winning streak. And I think the Aaron Rodgers comparison, there's something there. The way he gets rid of the ball and sees the field. It's some of this stuff, guys, is innate.
So I don't disagree with Colin there on a lot of that stuff. I do think there's an innate ability that Young seems to have, and I don't think it's inappropriate to say that he may go on to be the best quarterback that's come through Alabama under Nick Saban. I understand what a strong statement that is. But, John, here's the other thing. Colin's also right to point out that he is not the biggest guy in the world, and that when you have a quarterback that's more slight of build like that against a great defense, that great defense has the obligation to find out how well that quarterback can hold up over the course of 60 minutes of taking a beating. And on Saturday, Georgia couldn't lay a hand on him. It was almost like Floyd Mayweather, just dancing and darting and really just kind of avoiding, any kind of big hit that would come his way. The one big hit maybe he took, he fumbled the football and then fell right back on it. But, John, if you're lucky enough to get the rematch against Alabama, don't you got to try to find out how Bryce Young's frame can hold up after taking a pounding, something that Georgia could not do this past Saturday?
Yeah, well, you have to get pressure on the quarterback. He's too good to sit back there. Whether he's too small or he's slight of build, that doesn't matter to me. The guy is a great quarterback. I actually had the opportunity to play behind or in front of someone who was too small and fragile, but yet gets the ball out pretty well. And Bryce Young's one of those guys that, he moves, he creates plays with his feet. But ultimately, let's talk about Georgia here. Georgia, I think their game plan, you saw it early on, that first half of the game, there is an anticipation that we would be able to affect Bryce in the pocket by just rushing 4. And that wasn't the case. The storyline coming into this game is how superior Georgia's defensive line was to Alabama's offensive line. And they answered the bell really, really well. And I'm talking about that offensive line for Alabama, because we weren't able to affect him. And you saw more dog pressure, some more linebacker pressure. They were picking that up. The few occasions where we did have the opportunity to get a hand on Bryce, he escaped, and we come away from the game with 0 sacks. If that's the storyline in the rematch, given the opportunity, then I think a similar result could be expected. But I see it as an SEC championship game. Georgia went in with the game plan of, let's see if we can affect him with 4 rushers. And the answer was no. They had to bring more. And I think that's valuable information to have as you game plan for the next opportunity.
So is it too simplistic to say then, because this is what someone like me sitting on the couch, or I guess I was at the game, but, so to speak, sitting on the couch Monday morning quarterbacking, when you look at, the way in which it worked out, I'd rather lose by 50 in the first quarter trying to get to him and taking the kind of gambles and risks that could lead to even more Alabama success. I'd rather risk a lot with the chance of great reward as opposed to what seemed like the opposite of that on Saturday. Is that too simplistic an explanation for what happened this past weekend?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think you see a breakdown in coverage in the back end, and a lot of that had to do with just missed assignments. That was nothing that Alabama was doing. So you give them opportunity, and that obviously shortens your opportunity up front to get to him. And then if you bring pressure, which I think Georgia started to do more and more, especially in the second half, if you don't get home with those, it puts more pressure on your back end. Now, when I say pressure, I don't have statistics on this, but it's anytime you bring 5 or more. Well, there's many of our pressures were just 5-man pressures. Whereas you look back at the LSU game, you look at the Auburn game, and they put their guys in some really tough spots. And Coach Smart alludes to it, that they won a lot of their one-on-one battles where Georgia didn't. Well, those one-on-one battles were created by bringing 6 and 7 at times to try to affect Bryce Young, and understanding the risk that you're putting your back end in a little more vulnerable position. Now, are you going to have to take that risk? Yes, but the reward needs to be that you get home and you don't allow him to have the time that he had in the SEC championship game.
It's Chase for the Championship, presented by Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, Georgia Farm Bureau, and R.S. Andrews. In the time we have left, we want to turn our attention to the opponent for the Dogs in the upcoming Orange Bowl, the Michigan Wolverines. Now, when Kirby Smart found out he was playing in the Orange Bowl and appeared in the Orange Bowl preview press conference, at the time, he was forced to say, no, he's had so much on his plate getting ready for Georgia's own games that he hasn't had too much time to pay attention to what he's seen from the Michigan Wolverines, but he did notice some things both during the Big Ten title game and then the aftermath of that game that certainly impressed him about Michigan. This is Kirby Smart on that, going back to Sunday.
The biggest thing that I noticed was the physicality they played with last night, the leadership they had. I was thoroughly impressed with the interviews that I saw among their players post-game. I think you can always kind of tell, where a team stands and what they're all about by what they talk about, the messaging, and to hear those guys talk after the game was really impressive. That they're a senior-laden, senior-driven team that leads that way.
Of course, one of the names that a lot of folks have now become very familiar with on the Wolverine squad is Aiden Hutchinson, Heisman Trophy finalist. What he's been able to do on the defense side of the football. Smart did say Sunday he was obviously very well aware of him. In fact, he's actually gotten some intel on Hutchinson from somewhat of an unlikely source. Once again, here's Kirby Smart.
Yeah, number one, I was really impressed with his interview last night, and then again today. I called him on I forget who he was on. He was on with the college football playoff coverage, and just you can tell high motor, high intensity, serious, just a talented player. And it's funny. Last night when I got home and just turned the game on, was watching it. I got a 9-year-old son that loves college football. He watches everything YouTube, and he started telling me about Michigan's players. And that's the first guy he started telling me about. And I'm like, how does my 9-year-old son know about Aiden Hutchinson? And he knew everything about him and was giving me all these stats. And I was pretty amazed because I really just started to fill myself in with Michigan was last night. And he was talking about Aiden.
I think that's great that Smart was getting that from his son, and I'm always amazed by what my own son seems to learn from watching some of those YouTube videos about football and everything else. But, John, this is one of those things where Georgia and Michigan, their paths haven't crossed now for a few decades on the field. I think the two helmets look good side by side. I think the matchup's going to have a lot of historic ring to it back in the Orange Bowl for the first time in a long time. As I mentioned, back against the Wolverines for the first time since most of us were born. And it's just going to be the kind of thing that Georgia fans, I believe, are going to be very excited about once it finally gets here. There is certainly a lot to like about what Michigan's done on the field this season. Jim Harbaugh, not exactly the butt of many jokes anymore after the way the Wolverines played in 2021, right?
Yeah, it's funny because there was a lot of swirl around Harbaugh's security as a coach in Michigan before the season and really early on in this season. And obviously that has since ceased. But this Michigan team reminds me of where the Georgia program was a few years ago, in that they're talented, they're senior led, they seem like they have really good leadership and are creating synergy among themselves. They're not their roster is not the most talented, despite having two of the best defensive ends in college football, probably 2 first-rounders in Hutchinson's and Ojabo on the other end. So really dangerous in places. But I think that's what the fear is when you have a team that has good leadership, that believes in one another, has a little bit of an underdog approach and mentality, and they are talented. Those are good ingredients for success. Now, for Georgia, on paper, Georgia's the more talented team. There's tough matchups, granted, but you have to come in and you have to play well. You look at the way Michigan is built, and they're built very similar. You talk about their physicality. You talk about run first and being stingy on defense. So it's a little bit of a challenge there, but it's also, if you're going to be run first against this Georgia defense, that's really where this matchup is going to boil down to. And then on the other side of the ball, the ability to eliminate Hutchinson and Ojabo from affecting the game. It's similar to Alabama and Will Anderson, who, in his own right is one of the best pass rushers and really defensive ends in the game. Now you've just multiplied that by 2 when you go up against this Michigan front.
John, I want to finish with this. I think for a lot of folks, they look at Georgia not facing as an offense as high-powered as Alabama's is, and that feels like kind of a nice break moving to the college football playoff. But when you look at the quality of the Michigan defense and compare that to, like, say, Clemson week 1, which Georgia really struggled to move the ball at all, I guess speak to this, challenge of, hey, you're not stopping an offense quite as explosive as Alabama's, but you're trying to score against a defense every bit as good as the one against Clemson at the beginning of the season. What is that like for Georgia to try to move the ball against that Michigan defense?
Well, in my assessment, I think Michigan is a more balanced team, at least statistically, than Alabama has been throughout this season. Now, with that said, what's caused Georgia the most problems is a really high-end, high-efficiency, deep threat offense, which Alabama, between Bryce Young and Jameson Williams, they proved to have checked those boxes more so than Michigan does. But you look at complementary football, you look at a team that has a defense as good, or at least as plays in coordination with the offense. Michigan does that better, in my assessment, than Alabama has in a more consistent way. I think that's why, the past few weeks we talked about the voting committee for the college football playoffs. They're the body as a whole, we're valuing Michigan as a team over Michigan State, and it's because they do play a more complete style of football. They're not reliant on one side of the ball more than they are the other. And I think you've seen as the season has progressed, with the exception of the one blip on the radar against Michigan State, Michigan is a team that's dangerous because they're solid on both sides.
I think that's great analysis, John. Of course, I always love that from you here on Chase for the Championship, which admittedly the Georgia Chase for the championship last week hit a little bit of a pothole, but still on that road that could result in a culmination of the season in Indianapolis. John, I appreciate your analysis on that every step of the way here. Happy holiday season to you, and we'll look forward to getting a chance to speak to you again very soon.
Always a good time, BA. Go Dogs.
Big thanks to all of our sponsors who make this possible today there as well. Kroger, Marlowe's Tavern, R.S. Andrews, and Georgia Farm Bureau. And, of course, a special thanks to all of you as well for tuning in, being a part of this. As we continue each week here on the Chase for the Championship, we'll talk about Georgia being among the final 4 teams still playing here this season, how it gets it done against Michigan, and what happens after that. That's all coming up in the days to come. But for now, thanks for being here for Chase for the Championship, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time.